Afternoon, guys. Andrew with Defiant Tactical, and I want to share a couple of thoughts about the recent shooting in Florida of U.S. Air Force Airman, and also a little bit about the tools that we should be grateful for that we have here. There was recently an officer-involved shooting that occurred in Florida, and it went something like this, right? So the officer received a dispatch to go investigate a report of some sort of domestic disturbance at an apartment complex. He got there, someone reported that it was at such and such apartment, and he went up to the apartment. He knocked on the door 3 times, announced sheriff's deputy or sheriff's office, opened the door at least twice, and then when the door opened, an individual came to the door armed with a handgun. It was held down, his arm was just straight down, right? It wasn't brought to bear, he wasn't pointing at anything, he just held it down, indexed along the side of his leg. And the officer drew and shot him from a fairly close distance. The officer was standing on basically one side of the door threshold, and the gentleman who opened the door was just right on the other, obviously. So it was really close proximity. So, my opinion about that situation is, number one, that it's really tragic. Number two, it underscores a principle that John from Active Self-Protection teaches, which is that distance buys you time and time buys you options. I think that, given the circumstances that the officer was responding to, what was potentially a pretty dangerous situation, right? Domestics can be very dangerous for law enforcement officers. And that he was there by himself. And given the proximity to the person who appeared rather suddenly with a firearm in hand, he didn't really have many other options. He didn't have a time to sit there and analyze the guy's behavior and his body language and that sort of thing because of how close he was. And so the officer did what he really only had the one option. Not able to also make the assumption that the person is, has no ill intent, right? He just answered a door and answered the announcement of sheriff's office with a firearm in hand. And so he responded, with kind of the only way he could. Now, if he had put himself maybe a little further down the hallway or something, I can armchair quarterback that all day, I guess. Anyone could. Maybe it would have gone differently. But, so I was talking with a close friend about this. As you can tell, my opinion really has to do with the proximity of the threat. And so we sort of ended up in a disagreement, and I'm not quite an argument, but a disagreement, a debate, if you will, about the significance of proximity and how much that really matters when we're talking about maybe a difference of 1 to 2 yards or 3 yards versus like 6 to 10 yards. And so I said, well, I'll just test it out, right? And so that's where I was going is, we should be incredibly grateful that we live in a day where we don't have to just listen to the latest gun store counter Fudd rhetoric bullshit and accept that as truth because we don't know any better. We have easy access to training tools like airsoft guns. Okay, and my airsoft Glock is pretty much a 1-to-1 replica with the exception of weight to my Glock. I can use the same carry holsters. I even have a fake RMR on it. Right? It locks. It behaves just like my Glock, right? So, I just tested it out, and what I found, and as I expected, is that at 3 yards, shooting at a 1x3 target, I was able to, and starting out with my handgun in my hand, index next to my leg, just like in the video, I was able to bring the weapon to bear in about 0.6 seconds every single time, and I did it multiple times. Now, I tried drawing from my Safariland ALS duty holster, and it took me about 1.2 seconds, between 1.2 and 1.3 seconds, multiple times. So then I backed up from 3 yards to 10. And at 10 yards, I did the same test. Weapon indexed on my side. I brought it to bear in about 1 second. I was able to I was able to bring it up and fire around and point shoot and hit that target. Drawing from my ALS holster took me between 1.5 and 1.7 seconds. Now, that's not so bad, I don't think. I need to practice on my ALS holster. disabling those safeties, those retention mechanisms, takes me a little time. And then I tried for my concealment holster, just, for kicks and giggles. And I was able to do that in between 1.4 and 1.5 seconds repeatedly from 10 yards. So what that underscores, again, we don't have to just take people's word. We don't have to make assumptions. We don't have to speak in hypothetical. A lot of times when it comes to defensive stuff, we can test it because we have the tools today. And secondly, it sort of confirms what I said. A person with a gun in hand can bring it to bear and shoot you before you can clear leather. And that also validates my personal experience in training. The last training course that I did prior to the home defense consult was with strategic self reliance and defense. We did a force on force class, and one of the assignments, or one of the parts of that class, had me stand directly in front of the other student, and we were supposed to fight, right? And we could draw and shoot, or we could try and stuff the other person's draw and take it to the ground. We could do whatever we wanted. And guess what I found? Consistently, I was not able to move fast enough or shoot fast enough to shoot the other student before he could shoot me. Not at 3 yards, even if we were both starting concealed. And I have a fairly quick draw, as I just described, right? And this other guy was a little bit newer into shooting and stuff, but nevertheless, I still couldn't do it fast enough to shoot him and not get shot. So that really underscores then that the fact is that when you are that close, if you're within, we'll say, even apparently out to 10 yards, but we'll just say if you were 3 yards from a threat and they already have a weapon in hand, whether it's pointing at you or not, they're a threat, and they can shoot you before you can draw. And that's not even adding in the time that it takes, the human performance related time that it takes for you to make the decision to draw, and then for your brain to communicate it to your rest of your body, and then to initiate the action, right? That's additional time that I wasn't even able to replicate in my test. So don't just believe hype. Don't just, take people's word for it, and don't believe the gun store FUD bullshit. Test it out, either on the mats, or in force on force, or on the range, or like I did. It doesn't take a whole lot of effort. And make yourself as prepared as you can be. It's Andrew with Defiant Tactical, and we'll catch you guys in another time.